Jeg plejer vanen tro og lige at byde velkommen her til vores månedlige A2i Talk. Mit navn er Jakob Ravn og til daglig sekretærsleder i foreningen Access to Innovation. Og for de nytilkommende, så har vi jo gennem efterhånden de sidste mange år arbejdet med forretningsudvikling, partnerskab og innovation. Særligt til, hvor vi med fokus på Afrika og se, hvordan kan vi samarbejde mellem erhvervsliv, universiteter, NGO'er, offentlige myndigheder og senest også investorer omkring det at udvikle de løsninger, der kan være efterspørgsel på, men baseret på, en bæredygtig kommercielt mindset. A2i Talks, den plejer vi at lave som sådan inspirerende, hurtige sessions, hvor man kan nå at tage formiddagskaffe med sig en fredag formiddag, få inspiration og nyt ude fra den store verden. Så det er jo en bred vifte af, hvis vi er selv kompetente kræfter, vi er med os. I dag er jeg fornøjelsen af at byde professor Arne Remmen med. Arne har også været tilknyttet Access to Innovation i en årrække, må man sige, og var med til ligesom at lægge grund til initiativet tilbage i 2007, da vi startede alt det her op. Så Arne, rigtig dejligt at se dig være med ombord. Du har selvfølgelig en masse erfaring fra Afrika, men har jo også bevæget dig inden omkring det cirkulære økonomi, og kan i hvert fald være med fra den spæde start herhjemme, være med til at sætte den dagsorden. Vi kan se her nu med den cirkulære økonomi, og de diskussioner, der ligger i det, vinder også indpas i det politiske, både i forhold til EU-kommissionen, de nye programmer, der kommer ud der, men så sandelig også, når vi begynder at tale til de udviklingspolitiske strategier. Så det er måske til en start var det et buzzword at sige, at vi skal tænke cirkulært. Jeg synes, jeg oplever mange gange, når vi arbejder med vores partnere, at man har spørgsmål om at sige, hvad betyder det egentlig? Og nu kan jeg se, at vi har fået et udlandsk klingende navn med, so I might switch to Danish instead to ensure that we are all on the same page. So briefly, Arne, thank you so much for taking your time. I know you got a busy schedule, but I was hoping here for the conversation today that you can give us a bit more insight on the basics of what is circular economy, what are the underlying principles, and also open the discussion, how can we see the opportunity for bringing that into some of the innovation and partnerships network that we are working with in Africa. As usual, we spend about 20-25 minutes in a brief presentation from, in this case, Arne here today. And then following, there's a Q&A session for about 10 to 15 minutes. For questions, please throw them into the chat, and I'll from here try to navigate the conversations. For the individual questions, I'll throw over the microphone, so to speak, to you to ask the questions. So hopefully we can also have a constructive and dialogue here with us today. So without any further ado, Arne Remmen, the floor is yours, or in this case, the screen. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And as you mentioned, I have mainly been working together with the enterprises here in Denmark on the issues related to circular economy, or what we also call circularity. And then I have been following Jakob on the journey together on Access to Innovation, and I've also been engaged in different types of research projects in especially Eastern Africa, but also before that in Central America and so on. But I will share my screen, and it's coming up now. And I make it a full screen. Yes, okay.
We can see it.
You can see it. It's very nice. It works. After 2 years of exercising, it works the first time. Yes, I'm head of a research group called Sustainability, Innovation and Policy. So we are very much looking on these type of interactions. What I will present, and please, by the way, just ask questions along the way. I will skip some slides instead of having all the discussion in the end. It will be more interactive and dynamic, I think, if you just post the questions along the way. And otherwise, I'll ask you a question. So, but I have a few slides on the why circular economy, and then I will give more attention to how. So, but just to remind you, I think the big why we have to look into this is climate change. And these figure was in the Danish news ups. That was too quick. Yeah, 2 weeks ago, Monday morning, was setting up these figures, and I think there is a clear talk here. There's a global warming, and we need to take, in fact, more and more urgent action on this, especially stressing the action part. There's so much documentation out there and reports coming nearly every week that document this. But here you have with colors that we are getting close to the Paris Agreement ambition of staying below 1.5 degree. So, and another issue is all the resource aspects. In Denmark, you will see we have the 28th of March this year. It's estimated that we have used our national footprint and biocapacity, meaning that we in Denmark, and we can take the other Scandinavian countries, are living as if we have four Earths that we can draw on. And I think in general, the last couple of years, it has been around here, the 1st of August. If we look at the globe as such, there are some countries doing better here that is more aligned with the carrying capacity of the globe. But of course, you could say a lot of these issues is really about changing our way of living and the technologies we use in the Western world. We have created a lot of the problems, so we also need to take firm action on this. Then I sometimes people talk about green transition and circular economy as if it will cost a lot of money. But what I want to show you is that there's a lot of inefficiencies in the systems we have today, and that we, if you look here, they are from different parts of the world. And the general trend is that 1/3 of all the food produced are lost up in the upper part of the value chain, or it's wasted after the retailers and the consumer. So you see the numbers differ when you then, okay, 35% in North America is wasted, and it's mainly from the consumption and the retailers part. So they alone, these two, account for 67%. So 2/3 of the 35 is in the last part. So it's what we call food waste. While if you go to sub-Saharan Africa, you will see the opposite figure, that the losses are mainly related to the production. And to auction and to the handling and storage. Important. In fact, in the access to innovation, we have addressed this issue and have several projects that are looking into better options for better solutions for reducing these amount of waste. I'm sorry to tell you, if we look into a lot of other industry, for example, textile, it's also the same picture. 1/3 of all the clothes produced, they are never sold in the shops. In Denmark, they are burned or they end up in other waste streams. So it's a rather general picture that there is a lot of inefficiency if we look not just at the production process, but looking at the whole value chain. So these are also, in my understanding, part of the why we should look much more into these aspects. And then you could say this is El Magato Foundation that was presented this 2.5 years ago at the UN top meeting on climate change in New York, where they were saying, okay, when we talk about this issue, a lot of the focus is on the energy transition to apply renewable, make things more energy efficient, and so on. But we also have to look into all other types of products. So in fact, they have calculated the references there. You can go and see that 35% of the problems are related to our products. So we have to look into, food, as I just mentioned, and all of this. So you could say circular economy is part of the solution to the grand challenge of climate change and resource overexploitation of resources. So, and a lot of our discussion has been focused on the energy side. So what we aim at with the circular economy discussions are to look at the product sides of the what they here call the overlooked emissions. So this is work we are doing in Denmark, and I think I hopefully also can show you a couple of inspiring examples from Africa. So this was the why. Yeah, you could say this could also be part of the why. The way, and you can say it's basically went wrong when I was born. This understanding of buy and throw away society, or as they called it back in 1955, the throwaway living. So there has been a lot of reasons for this making food preparation more easy and so on, for creating all this waste. So as you can see here on the front page of Time magazine, it was celebrated as a big progress. All these single-use products as part of also the woman was moving out on the labor market, and then it should be easy. We have the microwave to do it quickly and so on. So this is of course also part of the why. We simply can't waste resources in the way we have done so far. So while you look at this photo, the child has nearly disappeared in the waste stream, you could see. But any questions so far to the why? Jakob, you just shout if I can't see them. So you could say what has been called the linear economy has been a very dominant model since the 50s to make life easy and convenient, with little or no concern about what the economists call environmental externalities. And I think this word externalities is saying everything. It's seen as well, we need economic growth, we need progress and all this. So, and then unfortunately, there are some externalities. So you could say what has been going on for some years now is discussion on how to integrate, instead of talking about externalities, how to integrate this. And I think circular economy you can see as the most comprehensive way of trying to deal with these externalities. There are also other concepts coming up, like the donut economy, that is more integrating the social aspects also. But you could say, if I remember the way my grandmothers, they were living, then you could say circular economy was, in fact, back in time, the old normal. So what Walter Stell have put it like reuse what you can, repair what is broken, remanufacture what cannot be repaired, remanufacture is taking it back to the factory and upgrade it and so on. And then recycle what cannot be reused. And this is a kind of in most people working with this, they have the priority in their mindset that the most sustainable solution is to reduce the amount of resource flows and reuse and repair as part of the inner circle, then refurb or remanufacture. There's a lot of work for this. And then the last priority is, in fact, recycling. That there's a lot of misunderstanding related to these words. Danita, I have used some time convincing Danita that recycling is not what they are trying to aim at. It is, in fact, reuse. Recycling is when the materials, when you take, for example, plastic and make it back to recycling, then it's on the material side. If you reuse, it's still the product. So I can use my coffee cup, but it's hard to recycle. It can, in fact, be part of becoming, either this Rockwool is the Danish name for the company, but that's so insulation materials. So you could say this is the linear economy drawn up by this El Magato Foundation that I already made, who have you can find a reference in the scientific literature to circular economy already back in the 80s and 90s and so on. But after 2010, and it's very much due to El Magato Foundation, they have really made the understanding very, very popular. But one of the first publications they made was this, and saying basically, you could say the way the linear economy is organized, we have taken nature as an unlimited resource. If we have exploited a land, agricultural land, we then just move on to another place. The same with the mining and so on. There has been very little renewable energy used, and you could say 70% of the materials economy, the waste, is created in the mining of the materials and in the manufacturing. And then you could say we as consumers, we have 30% of this. Back 12 years ago, we said it was a small percentage we keep, and also a rather small percentage that was recycled. There are some recent reports saying it's perhaps 8 or 9%, depending on the country that is a part of a closed loop. So we need to change this mindset and this understanding, and it's here where the circular economy is coming in. And this is from the same report saying has to see nature as natural capital, that we have to preserve the ecosystem. There is a lot of attention now coming up to this with the forest and the oceans and the soils and so on, and the biodiversity. It has, of course, in some countries been on the agenda for long, but now I would say it's a global concern in the discourse. So we need to reinvent, I would call it, ways of producing where we can keep the biological nutrients in place, circulate this. For example, as organic fertilizer within agriculture, and we have to look into what they here call the technical nutrients and see how material, plastic metals and so on can be circulated. So this is the very early drawings saying we need to change our mindset. We need to look as waste as food, or that's food in the sense, look at it as a resource for new activities. And we have to use as much renewable energy as possible at the same time, so that we get rid of the fossil fuels and the stuff we can't reuse and recycle. So this was then the very popular model they draw a couple of years later. Il MacArthur Foundation, again, having the same with the biological and the technical materials. And you can say, again, the priorities to maintain and share has been added in more recent version. If we, as users, maintain our clothes, maintain, repair it, and so on, then this is in fact some of the greatest benefit we can do to the earth. Then the second priority is the reuse and redistribute. If you go to eBay or DBA, it's called in Denmark, then you'll find a lot of activities on this, and it's partly going under the radar in a lot of cases. And then the third priority, you can also take a look on how the circles go back. Here it go back to a service provider, or in the platform economy, you could say it go back to some of these places where people exchange on the net, or you can buy used stuff, textiles and so on different providers on this. And I think also more and more shops are looking into these possibilities. And then the third priority is we have quite a bit of different words, but mainly covering that you see here, the circle is going back to the manufacturer. So they can take it back and have upgraded. If it's IT, for example, a lot of cases you can extend the lifetime by upgrading the computer. That will, by the way, mainly be called refurb. While if it's bigger machine, it's often called remanufacturing. And then you have the last circle is then the recycling so going back, if we have the plastic bottle, going back to the companies who are able to recycle. And what we should do less of, what we have been very good in Denmark to reduce landfills. There are very, very like few percentage going to landfills. So this is one way we have, but then we have, on the other hand, been extremely good, perhaps world champions in burning our waste, and then you lose the resource. So you could say the idea of waste as a resource is to minimize what is going to energy recovery or incineration, because then you lose the resource. That is perhaps a few things you can get out of it, but the more we can keep it in the loops, the better it is. Question so far? I will then.
Please go ahead, Arne. Please go ahead, Arne. I think it's very informative. Thank you.
Yeah, you could say what we have been doing within. I've worked with this more or less since mainly in a Danish context, but as I mentioned, also in other countries since the Brundtland report back in '87. And in the beginning, our focus was a lot on the factory, you could say, to reduce the emissions from the factory. They were rather dirty back in the early 90s. There was a lot to be done. But then we got the understanding that we need to move on and look at the whole value chain and have several projects doing this. And what also is called industrial ecology, but I will say is also what is the idea within circular economy, is to look across, not just in the single value chain, but also looking across, because what is perhaps waste for me in one value chain could be a product or become a resource in another value chain. An often example is, instead of burning the textile waste, it can be compressed and used as a product within the automotive industry and so on. So how can we connect between the different value chains is what circular economy and industrial ecology is highlighting very much. So now I'll move on to during the last couple of years, I've mainly been working together with Uganda University in Uganda, in northern part of Uganda. And I was there before Corona 2 years ago. I will go again later this spring. But at that time, one of our former students from Uganda who graduated, I think 4 or 5 years ago from Aalborg University, he went back to Gulu and he found this that they were wasting the bottles, and he learned in Denmark that he even could earn money on the bottles by going to the supermarket and put it in the bottle, and then he got a return. So he got, by practical experience, the understanding that waste equal money, as he once told me. And he was setting up, especially for street kids and homeless, these type of activities, trying to make waste bins out of the wasted plastic bottles. So this was the first activities 2.5 years ago, and also doing, I'll show later, what they are now doing, also trying to educate the young people on these activities. He was also set up one of these where young people could come from the street, and if they have collected the waste, they could use the computers and the games for a certain amount of time, depending on what they have collected. But I got a Christmas letter from him late last year, and where they were highlighting what they have accomplished since then. And you can say, again, look at their slogan, transforming waste, empowering communities. So they have set up activities in the communities to collect the plastic waste, and they had developed different machines and so on in order to be able to recycle. And I think one of the stuff that was amazing when Corona came 2 years ago, they were the first to provide face shields to all the hospitals and people working in the healthcare sector in the northern part of Uganda. They have developed these in order to have the face mask in a more comfortable way. So you see here, they provided a lot of face masks to especially also the refugee. So what you see, this face mask was a former plastic bottle. So it's a very specific way, and they call the company Taka Plastic. The Swahili word for waste, and they have now turned into they are now just under the last 2 years, they are now 30 staff and making a living out of recycling plastic, you could say. And one of the ideas a lot of people are promoting on the internet to make tiles, to make bricks out of it. I think there are much better ways to make bricks in Uganda and other African countries. But perhaps this is what they did together with Uganda and Denmark and an architect firm in Denmark, making machines in order to make a small scale of all the plastic waste they have in the refugee settlements. And here, in this case, you could see they make roof tiles. So I think, and they have already also showcased it on Milano Design Week and got a lot of attention and also support from different type of organizations. So, and then they have also introduced a blog where they write about this, and what, with my environmental background, is really nice to see that they go and what we call 4R. So the first one is the reduce, reuse, recycle, and then resync. Could we use something else, or could we make bottles of a better quality so we could keep it in use for a longer period? So one more case that I'm involved in myself is that we've got just a research project that will begin this spring, where we are basically doing some of the same ideas. I think we have had a lot of exchange of learnings between Taka Plastic and our project, inspiring each other. But basically, we take a different type of agriculture waste, and when you put this, press it together, making what we also call biobriquettes, then you can in fact have a much better way of cooking. So we can also reduce the cutting of the forest, deforestation, and so on. But it's also better cooking in the sense that it's much less emissions and much less particles. So there are also very nice health impact. But as you can see, this is also about entrepreneurship. It's about how to engage the local communities in these activities. It's about the business model and marketing and so on. And it's about understanding the preferences of the women in the cooking. But it's at the same time, we see it as an educational product. So how to create awareness, not just looking at the private household, but also look at the public schools, so that they implement it, and the parents and the students can learn from how they do at the public schools. So see it as a way to combat climate change and at the same time deforestation. And you can say this is basically my understanding. To do these things, we need really to work together across a lot of different disciplines. We will have 6 students in the PhD student from Aalborg University in the coming years, and researchers from a lot of different departments. I'm mentioning here, and then Aalborg University and Copenhagen University is also engaged, but we will, yeah, you name it. The only one we didn't put in so far, but I would be surprised if they're not included along the way, is the health aspect. But that was more to make a delimitation, one place at least. So, but I mentioned all the other type of disciplines here. Any questions?
Well, first of all, Arne, thank you so much. Again, I think very inspiring and informative. And Now, however, I'm getting older, so allow me to be the grumpy old man at this.
Don't worry, you know me. I always have 2 minutes like.
And I'm thinking about. I mean, I think in principle we can all agree to the opportunities within this framework. However, when then hitting the ground, especially you could say in an African context, I had a dialogue with our colleagues down there, and often they're mentioning one time they mention now it's never going to work. I said, why? If it's a good idea, we have to reuse and we have to collaborate in order to use our resources. And I said, well, end of the day, let's say in Kenya, we had the discussion, you'll never see an Indian and a Kikuyu working together. So I think underlying to all of this is there's a big degree of in trust, you could say, between the parties involved. Have you seen examples of how you try to mitigate that, or have you seen examples of where you might failed? Because I think that's an underlying risk, and we're coming out from a very trust-based society here in Denmark and in Europe, and I think there might be something in terms of the contextual sides that you have to think of.
Yeah, but I agree, and we had 2 others scientific when you apply for these type of Danita research funding, I think the one was had a very good understanding of these issues, while the other one was saying, "Are you aware of all the risk in the sense of that you are more or less getting into a fight with the traditional charcoal industry, you could call it even, because it's very organized." But on the other hand, I would say if they want to make this biocharcoal, I would call it, sell it to the people in Uganda, in Kampala, this will also reduce deforestation. We try to aim at broader in the sense of making the changes locally and engage the local communities and so on. But I think this type of risk and trust, you need to deal it along the way. I think it's very difficult to sit at the table and consider all these type of issues. I will have to say, I think our experience from access to innovation is that these issues that you often hear about in Eastern Africa and so on, I don't think we have experienced that. We have experienced a lot of problems with what I would call upscaling. So making a nice demonstration product, but then how to move on to having public toilets at all marketplaces in Uganda, or having nice facilities for living and so on. So I see a lot of problems related to the upscaling, but on the other hand, and that was the learning from Morten's PhD project, we need to combine the mind and the heart. That was the title of Morten's PhD, and try to do good, but also make it a viable business models that can be implemented broadly. And the good thing is that a lot of financial institutions that you briefly indicated are moving into this and getting much more interest in these areas. Yeah.
Thank you for that. And again, the floor is open for questions. So please either raise your hand or put them in the chat. But meanwhile, Arne, could you perhaps throw in a few recommendations? Now, you've been working with the area for a number of years now. So if you want to get going with this, I could imagine that, let's imagine that you're a small NGO or an SME that would like to engage in this field. It's a bit of a daunting task, as there's quite a few considerations and also external partners that you probably need to engage with. And then end of the day, it might be easier just doing what you do and do it again. So if you want to get engaged, what would be kind of the top 3 recommendations?
4, as I in the slide: reduce, reuse, recycle, rethink the system. I think it's the main recommendation will be to change the mindset, to go from seeing waste as something that just have to get away, or seeing as a health problem we have to take care of and due to proper landfilling and so on. I think as Africa, and perhaps especially East Africa, have been doing, when it comes to the phones, they jump all our cables in the ground and all the heavy investment in that type of infrastructure, and went to the mobile phone directly. And for many years, they were much longer ahead of Europe when it comes to mobile pay and stuff like that. And I think this is basically what also can be done related to the waste, if you begin to see it as a resource. Some is poor, but you saw they were making rather, some of the waste is poor, but some of it, if you separate it, you can even make out of these empty plastic bottles, make face shields and do it before the international community can provide it to, for example, the refugee camps and the health system in the northern Uganda.
Okay, I see there's a few raised hands and questions. Lisa Nissen, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you. No, thank you, Arne, for an interesting presentation. I was just wondering, the whole public sector regulations. I mean, in a Danish context, we have all these strict rules when it comes to waste and so on. I mean, how is the development in an Ugandan setting when it comes to rules and regulations that you have to navigate in?
Yeah, I think the general issue is that that you have Danita and a lot of other type of institutions that have supported very nice policies developments. So you have a lot of good policies on paper. So their understanding is there, but there is no practical implementation. So it's very, very often the implementation that is like. So it was also why I haven't even looked into it, but I'm sure they have nice waste policy in Uganda. But these are the people making the change. This is the people on the ground. And I like this of transforming waste, look at it as a resource and empowering the communities. And my last slide for today will be one I got from you on the new possibilities related to Danita. But I see also Thomas is having a question.
Perhaps before Thomas is jumping on board, I would pass on the question to Helene Rask-Grøn. Please, Helene.
Okay.
Thank you. Am I on air? Yeah. One of your first slides, you showed us that our waste is very different from the African waste. So in Africa, there was very little waste in the production side, which is also my experience. For 20 years, I never had any garbage because there were people walking ahead of the garbage collectors and searching through everything so that anything of value was already used unless I had thrown paint over it so that it couldn't be used. And then I was thinking, middlemen, both in East Africa and in India, we saw the big fights where the Indian farmers were fighting the middlemen. And in South Africa, I know there's this at least 30% of food waste, simply because the food is taken from the local area, sent to the big distributors south of Johannesburg, and then it's repackaged and sent back to the same local areas, costing a lot of environment and costing a lot of money and costing a lot of waste. But if you try to break that chain, then you are in with the big business who earn so much money that they just cut your throat. So my question to you is, how do we balance to either stay under the radar and create something really nice in the local community, or miracle be so great that we have muscles to beat the middlemen? And to make it really complicated is, how can we facilitate therefore nice designers so that our local products are so super nice that people flock to our local designs? So thank you.
Yeah, it's a huge issue you are raising, and I think there has been some nice projects over the years where Danish designers have collaborated with, for example, textile companies in the south, making nicer designs, but this, yeah, it was the same, the issue you were raising there with the middlemen and the farmers not getting the benefits they should, and so on. It's of course a huge problem, and it was more or less also what one of the evaluators of our project was indicating. We should be aware we could get into a fight and competition with the ones making the traditional charcoal based on wood. So it's, yeah, I don't have the silver bullet to answer your question, but definitely we have to be aware of these type of difference, that the problems are not the same as this with the food waste and was indicated. Yeah. Jakob, you are
I'm here. I am surely in charge. And as it often is, I mean, we actually have two other questions here, but I think we will have to close the session. We try to be a bit tight on the time spent for these discussions. However, I don't think we are done with it for today fully, but we have to wrap it up. And of course, for those of you that have an interest, well, let's keep on going. I think for the coming years is also going to be a key focus within Access to Innovation. I know Danita, as Arne is also pointing out here, has got a big focus on this, and also with the different private foundations also increasingly focusing on this. So from our side, we'll try to pick up on the agenda, and for sure we're going to discuss the practicalities and the discussions for quite, and I would assume, a number of years. But since Arne here, you got one last thing to communicate.
Yeah, and Lisa is also here. She's the one responsible for this new Danita support theme called Globus. But that is just to highlight that I think one of the promising thing I have over the years have a lot of discussion with Danita and other similar institutions about this. Why don't use the local resources in the case of empowering local institutions within the educational system? And I think the young people, they are really buying in on this with circular economy and changing the lifestyle. It's the old people like me who have been caught in the linear model for so many years that have a more difficult time. But just to highlight that this will be launched here later in the spring in Denmark, and there will be application around. And write down Lisa Nissen. She's at least on my screen. She's the one who take care of this. I'll translate it to English and then circulate the slides, or what we uploaded, or what do we normally do. But But I think it's, instead of just making a new support scheme for educational institution, we managed to combine what was called Genbrug til Syd with this educational aspect. So I hope this will Genbrug til Syd so far, and hopefully this can strengthen and develop it further by combining with the educational sector.
Arne Remmen, thank you so much for your presentation and the closing remarks. I know it's always good when you can guide people with a bit of funding, so at least yet another batch of opportunities. Arne Remmen, thank you so much, and to the participant joining in here today, thank you so much for your time. Again, we will share the recording following, and hopefully you'll also stay tuned for our next coming session beginning of April. More on that in our newsletter and on our SoMe. So thank you so much for joining in. Enjoy the weekend, and at least here from my side, the sun is shining. So what's not to like? Thank you.